Cedric, the show Influencers Today is a 30-minute conversation with people about the influence industry. And what I wanted to do was to record an interview with you that would cover your show, what you've done, how you've built your brand, and all of that. Is that comfortable for you?
Yes, absolutely.
Fantastic. Well, listen, I'm going to take a tip from a pro and start a habit here, which is on my show, like on your show, everyone gets to introduce themselves directly to my audience.
It sounds like a great idea. Okay, so my name is Cedric Bullock. I grew up and currently live in Zurich, Switzerland. I finished my high school here. Then I went on a stint to Israel, where I was exposed to all types of startups, tech, and innovation, which kind of like sparked this entrepreneurial bug within me that I felt like I had to do something on my own. I ended up being in Israel for 7 years. And during that time, I originally started, I would say, a very simple and quote unquote boring text-based blog that turned out to be not my voice online. Like, text was not meant for me. And I realized that I have to find something where I can be more authentically me. And that's when I started experimenting with videos. Originally, I started just going around in Israel from one CEO and founder to the other CEO and founder of a startup. And I asked them if I could interview them. Just in brackets, I had no idea what I was doing in terms of video production.
And Cedric, how long ago was that you were this no-idea student going around Israel? When was this? How many years?
Officially, I launched my text-based blog in October 2015. And about a year later, based on feedback or the lack of feedback I got from my texts, I realized I had to change something. And that was around mid-2016, early 2017. And then in 2017, I made an active decision that I had to figure out how to produce high-quality video interviews.
I think also, Cedric, that was about the time you and I met when I was working at Huawei. And you had already started some of the video. But I recall one of the nice things about working with you over the period of 2+ years was watching you mature and watching you find your style.
Thank you.
And you kind of increase in your confidence and the complexity of what you could offer. It's not an easy craft to immediately master, but you seem to grow into it.
That's true. I mean, thank you so much for the kind words. I mean, for me, every person has to find their voice online. And I always say there are 4 ways and every individual is different. So you have to understand which one is yours. But there's, the text, there's audio, there is video, and then there's pictures. And everybody has to find what is right for them. And for me, it was definitely video, which happened to be very good timing also in terms of the demand that there is out there for video, specifically, let's say, in the insightful video area, in the niche of trying to really get the people's expertise, get the people in the middle and in the spotlight of each video. And that was definitely very, very lucky and good timing that we were in this time. But keep in mind, I have a finance and business background, so no idea of originally how to produce a video.
Now, do you have days where you really regret using the video format? I mean, right now, I don't think I'm camera ready. Do you ever have days where you don't feel like going on camera?
No, I do not have those days, and I can give you also a very simple answer to this. If you feel comfortable with your voice online, you will not have that, because I just really feel comfortable with being in front of the camera and being myself.
I'm very comfortable now with the audio and the podcasting and being able to, have a conversation with someone and record it and then know that will be played back later. It takes a while, but it's just interesting how I mentioned a little write-up about you, how you're a camera guy, I'm strictly audio. But as you say, everyone finds their voice online, and it's a question of teaching them how to allow it to flourish.
Exactly. I agree with any word you said just now, because that is the key. And I think we both agree that these days in 2019, 2020 and so on, you must have some kind of voice online, whatever it is. For some influencers, it might be pictures on Instagram. For other people, it's writing text because they're very skilled writers. For me, that was not the right choice. So for me, being 100% true to myself online is video. And this, I never have to hide. And I don't have to hide the fact that
So your video is under the title of the Startup Show. And you've just completed your 150th episode. Congratulations on being halfway to your goal of 300 episodes. Tell me about the format of the show and what you're trying to achieve on that.
My passion really lies in talking to these entrepreneurs who are actually in the process of building something. That is kind of like what fascinates me, what gets me up in the morning, the spark in the people's eyes when they talk about their venture. That is like something that excites me. In the short term, I try to help these people with giving them exposure on my channels. And on the long term, I would really like to also invest money, but not only money, also know-how and operational, let's say, aids to these people.
An aspiring venture capitalist. I think venture capital is something you can either be or perhaps aspire to be bigger. But it sounds like you are a venture capitalist as well.
Yeah, I mean, the definition of VC is that you actually put your money, but like that is something that like just like from the financial possibilities that I don't have yet is not yet something that is possible. So I don't want to, put like an image on something that like I don't have yet. So like I'm still like trying to build my fund, to build the structure, the vehicle where actually LPs and GPs can invest their money and then we allocate it to the startups. So that is not something we are there yet.
You're also currently attending advanced schooling, is that correct?
Yeah, actually, it's funny you're asking. I handed in my master thesis 3 weeks ago, and I'm now in this period in between waiting for my grade and the graduation. So there's no, let's say, attendance required anymore at the university here in Switzerland, but I'm about to finish my master's. So yes, everything that you see that I tried or building, let's say online, is a byproduct of something that I've been doing next to my studies.
Yeah, no, because it's not an easy thing to master. Now, congratulations on your master's degree. What's your degree in?
My degree is in accounting and finance. That is like something that you have to have if you really want to, become successful in a venture capital. Your education is still valued or should be valued very highly, especially if you have, master's and a bachelor in those fields.
Yeah, well, plus also it'll help you with the analysis of big data, which is...
Yes.
Why your focus is on entrepreneurs? Do you ever get envy for big companies? Or how do you engage beyond the startup?
We had, like everything is nice when you have a hobby or a passion project. At some point, you have to figure out a business model around it and professionalize it. And that is a process that I'm in right now, where it's really trying to figure out how can we use our skills of video production to really facilitate knowledge transfer, scalability. So like you have some insights of people, you have expertise, and we want to use this expertise and bring it online. And we realized that like what we are really good at is producing high-end video quality, content quality for companies that are interested in featuring people. So we are far away from news, we are far away from anything that is related to snackable content or viral content. We are very much into the business content, very much into expertise. And our big goal is that whenever any of our listeners, and it doesn't matter how many there are, but any listener or any audience member that is watching any of our videos, the goal is always that they leave the video with the feeling that they learned something.
I was watching your latest episode, and you were interviewing the founder of Kingfluencers, and that's really quite interesting. It's aligned with what I'm working on, and I'd like to know more. And so I made sure in my email to them that I mentioned that I saw it on Cedric Bullock on YouTube. So it's
yes,
it's a very enjoyable format. How do you keep it fresh? Because you've been doing this now for quite some time.
We always listen very strongly to feedback from our target audience. So, for example, our target audience is really we want to reach startup investors, people who at least consider allocating some of their capital to investments in startups. And we ask them, hey, what is it that you would like to hear from these startups to make a decision whether you are interested or not? So the goal is not ultimately that everybody who watches says yes. The goal is that people will be able to say very quickly whether someone is interested in potentially investing in this company or not. And like this, we have various feedback that we get. So we don't listen to every feedback that we get because we get a ton of feedback, but we only make sure that we listen to that feedback that is really relevant to our target audience. And like that, we sometimes get ideas of how we should structure the videos to provide as much added value to these people as possible. I give you a very simple example. In the beginning of my journey, we would really just like talk about like more or less structureless about any topic that came into my mind when I was looking at the startup. Now we have a very clear structure because we asked the investors, hey, what is it that is most important to you when you look at early stage founders? And most of the people answered us, hey, we want to know who the founder is, what is special about them, what is their background. And in the second step, we want to hear about the startup they're currently working on. And that is exactly what you hear in the first 3 minutes of any video. So really understanding who that person is and what the idea is. And then I have absolutely no problem if someone decides, hey, this is not an investment opportunity for them, and turn off the video.
Your show doesn't across like a non-stop pitch show. Goodness knows we've been to enough tech conferences and we've seen the stage where everyone gets up and they have the 3 minutes and they really go at it hell for leather.
Yes.
But your show is a lot more engaging than that, so it's not like a pitch deck, but it, I guess, allows that in some way.
Yes, I mean, I totally agree with you, and that is exactly the point. Based on our feedback that we get, when you're sitting in a investor meeting, a one-on-one meeting, it's never just like getting up on the stage and talking for 90 seconds a rehearsed pitch. It's always like the human interaction that you have between two people. And we try to really get this atmosphere where we just have a conversation and by chance also recording it on video. And that is something that we feel is like really like this added value, or like our personal USP that we can deliver to our investors, is that they get to know the entrepreneurs on a more personal level without it having to be like anything that is staged. I mean, when you look at a pitch session, it's usually, let's say, 60 to 90 seconds, maximum maybe 5 minutes. And that is something I think you can rehearse, you can practice.
I've seen vegetable peelers sold with similar style. It's
yes.
Just it's a shtick. But
yes.
Agreed. I mean, the nice thing about the social is that your show gets behind the entrepreneur. Your shows are about 20 minutes plus or minus. Tell me, how frequently do you publish, and kind of what's the production timeline that goes into each show?
Yeah. I mean, that was also a process. I mean, in the beginning of the first, I would say 30 to 40 episodes, it was more like a case, like whenever a startup would agree to a meeting or like an interview, I would go immediately and record it. And now we got to a point where we have a backlog of always 20 startups that are already available and are just waiting for a date. So we really put in a lot of research, making sure we try to only get the best of the best. And then usually what happens is we have a big process in place to make sure we do the proper background research. Early stage founders are usually not so much in the media that you can really like Google them easily. So you'll usually find the LinkedIn profile, but not much more than that. So we really send out about 20 to 30 emails to shared contacts on LinkedIn to really see if that is a good person and what people are interested in knowing about that person.
So that's the opposite of an influencer, because normally when you're doing on my show influencer relations, you're talking quite in depth with people who have large following. I know the process you're going through. It sounds very different than if you're kind of seen as an influencer. Can we, for a second, talk about who's listening to you, Cedric, and who's your audience?
As I said before, like for me, we are really trying to target people who are interested in startups and trying at least to or considering investing in startups. Now, the thing is, or the problem is that like just within that niche, the target audience is not so big. So we have to kind of like expand a little bit to get also to these private investors who might not work for a venture capital fund or might not work for a corporate, but they kind of like see themselves also investing. So those are kind of the people that we're looking for. And to really attract these people, we have to be a little bit broader than just startups. So we try to find people who are, interested in one of the three topics of startups, tech, and or innovation. And we try to really cater to them interesting topics that they will then be, I would say, interested in more content that we do, and then see that like we have like this dedicated independent show, which is the startup show, to really cater to them also in our ultimate goal, which is startup investing.
Is there a geographical focus to your interviews and to the people you approach, or is that global?
I mean, vision-wise, it's definitely global. To be realistic, you have to start somewhere. The biggest chunk of audience is definitely here in Switzerland. Depends on the channel, between 30 to 40%. And then we have another big chunk of around 20%, which is Israel, and another one between 10 and 20%, which is the United States. And then, the rest. That is like kind of like where my audience is.
Yeah, and you see that with the scattering across any show that is geographically centered, but also of English language. I mean, my little country of Hong Kong wouldn't even show up on the heat map of readership, but still there's a very strong, vibrant, and large English community here. And the curse of the English language content in online distribution and reading.
Yes.
Cedric, you do not have to attend school this week, so congratulations. What's next for you now that you're finished with your schooling and you've got this really large and loyal audience base in Switzerland, and also you're Israeli and you're a global businessman? So is Zurich home, or what's next for you?
It's a very good question. I mean, for me, like definitely I feel like we are in a very interesting position in terms of like what we have built online, and I really don't want to give that up. And we are now slowly figuring out ways that I've never dreamt of how to make money. So like for me, it's very important that, for example, the startup show, which is 100% independent, and I always wear my yellow sweater, stays independent. So like this is not something I want to sell. But I would say definitely something that if we can, I would really like to make a business from it, which is more a mindset than actually that's the only thing that is holding me back right now. But like for me, it's really important that like we can further continue with this video production, because I really believe this is like the future and the most scalable way of content production that there is out there right now.
You have to become now a content company if you're going to create revenue from this. That's kind of a big leap, or is it the fact that we've always been content companies and it's just a question of monetizing it?
I would say, yeah, rather the second, where it's a question of how to monetize it. I would say based on our activities from 2018, where I'm happy to say that we produced over 250 original videos, so that's not including recycled content, and we see how happy our clients are and like which clients reach out to us and corporates reach out to us. We really see that there is a big opportunity, definitely for the next couple of years. I think people are just like figuring out now how important and how scalable video is and how important it is in the interaction with clients in any kind of industry.
Cedric, you're the master of the multi-camera angle. How do you achieve that?
Well, that is something that came over time. Originally I started with one camera, and then we added another two. So we now usually have in all of our videos 3 cameras. Usually use one professional DSLR camera where you can flip the screen so you can monitor it. And then I have usually 2 smartphones on left and right to add another extra 2 angles, which makes it easier for the production.
Understood. And you've got the steady narrative of the voice. Isn't it a challenge editing each of these, or you pretty much have your shots worked out in your mind as you're going through and blocking these interviews?
Yeah, I mean, originally I would really edit everything myself and do everything by myself. Right now we are in a case where most of it I delegate. I have a team of team members who helped me with the production of these videos. Like I couldn't produce 250 videos by myself anymore. So we really make sure that like we have enough human capital that like are able to really produce that amount of content.
Understood. So it's becoming a cottage industry. Have you thought about what's next for you with video or with influence, additional ideas, more things that you can be doing?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, like we're always exploring new things. I mean, like one of the key things, it's an old saying, I would say. You always say content is king, but the distribution is queen. So, like, I think we have figured out how to do the content, and now we're working on finding new innovative ways how to distribute our content. I give you a very simple example. Now we are looking to work with a couple of radio stations around the world that would embed our videos in their website and then tell the listeners to go check out their own website to see our videos. And that is a win-win for everybody, meaning like we get more people to look at our videos, we get the exposure, but they get high quality, insightful content around startups. And then they can tell the listeners to go on their website. So they're not telling them to go anywhere outside of their environment. They're keeping their listeners inside their environment. And that is something that seems to work very well. The other one is like, we work with various blogs in our niche, magazines and newspapers that are actively seeking high quality video content, specifically the insights of the content, like what are the people talking inside those videos. And the same, like they embed our videos and then spread it to their newsletter list. And like this, we really...
I'm going to have to come to you, Cedric, for advice because I think Influencers Today is a great podcast that, and I am really without the queen of distribution. So I am sorely lacking in that area. I'm glad to hear all these ways of improving upon your own successes.
Thank you.
One or two challenges that you're thinking about when it comes to the show and the guests and all that you do in terms of next steps? What are the one or two things that would keep you awake at night?
Yeah, very easy to answer this. I mean, like, as I said before, like, it's very nice to have a hobby and a passion, and it's very nice to have a business. But this transition from hobby to business is not so simple for various reasons, such as cash flow, such as regulations, taxes, accounting and bookkeeping, like the classical things that you deal with when you have a business. So like this transition that I'm in it right now, this is something that is like...
Good luck with that. Yeah, no, it's interesting because I've had my own business now for 5 years.
Yes.
And I kind of grew into having it in the last year, but it's a very complex thing to have your own business. And it's not always easy, but it's very rewarding. And look, it's allowed us to establish long-term residency here in Hong Kong. So being the head of a Hong Kong business has some advantages.
Yes, that is great. And like as I said, like I admire everybody who can do it. I think there's very different cases. In my case, as I said, like it's passion to profession. And sometimes, like there are easier ways to do it. Like if you have an investor or you have family members that just give you the money. But as you said, like it's hopefully very rewarding once we have it all in place and we can say that we are really like established as a real business.
What do your guests say about you in general when they're done with your show? What's the feedback you get when you finally turn the camera off? What do folks say to you?
Sure. I mean, number one, like if you go on Instagram and you watch one of my highlights, it has testimonials. So you can see about 50 of those there. And number two, most of the people really appreciate this authentic talk where they're for the first time, most of these entrepreneurs, they work for 1 or 2 years on their startup ideas, half of the time while they're still working at another place. And it was kind of like the first time where someone gives them the validation of like, hey, wow, you have built something and I'm impressed. And like, tell me about like what you do and why you do it. And that is something that like, these people, no matter how big your audience, how big or small your audience is, to give someone this validation of like, hey, look, this is something that was really helpful for me just to formulate and being asked about the daily struggles. That is something that like we feel we give to the entrepreneurs.
Cedric, I was just going to say on that, you should listen to Penny Powers. She does a lot of outreach for small, medium entrepreneurs and kind of the challenges of running a business and the emotional support required. But anyway, sorry to interrupt you. We're about to say the second thing that you get feedback from.
Okay, the second thing is that like in early stage, as I said before, most of these companies or the founders, they are not yet so personally branded online. So you rarely find an article about them. You rarely find anything more than their LinkedIn and Facebook profile. And usually when investors go out and invest in early stage companies, the most important thing is who is the founder and CEO. And then one of the first things they do is they go on Google and they type in their name. And then very often, even after we publish that video 2 months, 3 months, sometimes 6 months, or even a year later, these entrepreneurs call me back and say, hey, Cedric, thanks to your video, our investors felt much more comfortable talking to us because they were really able to get an authentic conversation already before the first meeting. And that is, I think, something is much more valuable, the impact of these single views versus like how many views you get. And that is something that we try to do for these entrepreneurs, that they have online already a presence that gives them outside validation versus just their LinkedIn profile and Facebook profile, which is already a basics to have, but it's not giving them the outside validation.
As you say, the potential investors are entering a conversation where they've already listened to somebody for about 20 minutes, seen them in action, raised their comfort level, and felt like they've gotten to know them. That's really useful feedback, and that's really beneficial. So,
yes.
Cedric, I really appreciate you taking the time, and I am going to come back to you and ask you for all the tips you learn about distribution.
Sure.
And thank you for joining Influencers today, and please keep me posted, and we'll do a recap catch-up in 6 months or whatever to hear what it is in the world you're doing. You looking forward to the next stages?
Yes. Thank you so much, Walter. I really appreciate it. And I'm happy to be part of your journey also. And if there's anything I can help, or anybody of your listeners that want to talk about startups, I'm always happy to hear from them.
Can you spell your name, please, or your website?
Sure. I mean, my name is Cedric, Cedric, and my last name is Bollag, Bollag. And my website is called globaltechbox.com. So global tech, TECHBOX.com.
Fantastic. We'll see you online, and we'll see you soon. And thank you for your time.
You're welcome, Walter. Have a great day.